Hey comrades, in the year of our Lord 2000, the four-star classic Chicken Run was released. It was the first feature-length film released by Aardman Animations, so we have it to thank for a number of other classics that followed as well. And for those of you who haven't seen it, Chicken Run is a very good, very British stop-motion movie made for children about chickens trying to escape from a chicken farm. It's very normal. Like most great children's movies, it's filled with jokes and elements of horror. And I don't remember watching it when I was a kid very well, but it's amazing that it didn't traumatize me. It opens with a series of chicken breakout attempts that are references to literal war movies, like this clip from Chicken Run. And this scene from The Great Escape, a movie about people trying to escape from a literal POW camp in World War II. The chicken farm in Chicken Run is designed to look like an actual prison camp. The fence around it has barbed wire. And seriously, look at this. This is a prison watchtower on a chicken farm in a children's movie. And so of course all of this is hilarious. It's very funny to watch clay chickens go through all these tropes we're familiar with in much more serious context, especially because they add in a fair bit of slapstick and gags. And immediately after we get this opening sequence, we get another scene, the roll call. We see the chicken scramble around, and we see the villain of our story, Miss Tweety, and the camera angle here makes us see her from the chicken's perspective. Now this shot is really important, I think. Animated children's media often engages in what I tend to think of as the SpongeBob SquarePants rule. Kids shows very rarely have human adults be the main character, so if animators want children to be able to empathize with a story centered around adult stories, they have the main character be something else. Like a sponge, a car, a video game character, or whatever this fire lady is. Now there are some major exceptions, especially in older 2D animations, but it's clear that the children are supposed to see the world through the chicken's eyes. They are supposed to see the chickens as a halfway point, a compromise between having a story about children and a story about adults. Children see adults as very large, and to see Miss Tweety from this angle, looking up at her, really cements the connection that the audience can form with the chickens if they are children. The children will understand the chickens to be them. And so what do we see next when we have this villain introduced? Miss Tweety takes one of the chickens because she hasn't laid any eggs, and she kills the chicken. It's not graphic. We don't see the scene itself. We don't see her literally, chop off the head and, have blood going everywhere. But I think it's still horrific. We see the scene in the reaction of the characters around it, who are either trying not to pay much attention or actively looking at it, and we see the remains of the chicken that was taken, of Edwina. And I think children will be able to connect with the horror of the scene more directly than adults that have more of an emotional reaction. But there is one part I think might go over their head. When one of the chickens finds out that Edwina didn't lay any eggs and that they're going to kill her for this, she asks the other chicken, "Why didn't you give her any of your eggs?" And the other chicken says she didn't know. Edwina didn't tell anyone. This implies there is a system of chicken egg-laying solidarity, where if a chicken doesn't lay eggs, the other chickens that lay maybe extra eggs will share, so that they all get to live. And in another part of the movie, Ginger, the protagonist chicken, says that she can't give up any eggs because they are too valuable.
It's gonna cost?
Same as always, 1 bag of seed.
It's chicken feed.
What else could we give you?
Eggs.
We can't give you our eggs. They're too valuable.
And so are we.
Meaning that the system does seem to be in use still with other chickens, or else the excess eggs wouldn't have any value to them. But the dark implication here, the fact that Edwina didn't tell the other chickens, suggests that Edwina chose death. Either because she felt like by taking other eggs away from chickens that needed it, she was a drain on the system, or maybe she simply felt that the living conditions on the farm were so terrible that death was simply better than life. Pretty dark stuff for a movie I saw as a toddler. So we see right away that this is a movie that will have funny moments, but there are serious moments as well. There are serious themes in this movie. There's an underlying horror to the whole thing. Later on, in an attempt to make more money, Miss Tweety decides to make her own brand of chicken pie and to kill all of her chickens. But because the chickens are the main characters, because they are intelligent, because you are supposed to empathize with them, and they behave like people, and they're within the context of the movie, are treated as people. Within the framework of the movie, they were treated as people. The chicken pies feel cannibalistic in nature, like Sweeney Todd for children. And so the chickens are trying to escape. They have a bunch of plans. They're trying to figure out, and nothing's quite working. Not for all of them, at least. And an American rooster, Rocky, comes flying into the chickens' prison camp and promises to teach them all how to fly. And of course, he can't actually fly. He was shot out of a cannon. He's a circus rooster. But he lies to all of the chickens. When Ginger is going to be turned into a pie, Rocky bravely runs in and they save each other a few times from the giant chicken pie making machine with plenty of cartoonist glory and comedy. But afterwards, after saving Ginger and after she saves him a couple of times, under the weight of the guilt of his lies, Rocky runs away. But the other chickens are still looking for another way out. They still need a plan. So they've learned they can't actually fly, but they decide to do the next best thing. They fly through different means. So they built this giant cartoon plane with tools, stuff from their housing, stuff they've knitted, that kind of a thing. Rocky returns for their final escape before their happy ending where they can finally live free and live out the rest of their happy chicken lives. As an aside, I find it really funny that they made the rooster American. I think it might just be because it was distributed by DreamWorks and DreamWorks gave a lot of the funding, and maybe they thought that putting in an American would make it more marketable in the US. So I'm just gonna say it, Rocky is a DEI hire, and you can fight me in the comments if you disagree. And it's clear that I found Chicken Run to be a very enjoyable movie, but I found myself wondering about the deeper meaning of it. Like, what is the meaning of the story? And I don't think it's just one thing happening after another without any real meaning, and I don't think that would be a particularly interesting thing to watch. So whenever I have that kind of question about a story, I ask myself, what are the relationships between the characters, and how do those relationships develop? And how do the characters change? How do the characters develop? I think in general, if you see how a character develops, that tells you something about the values set forth within a movie. And the most obvious example of character development is Rocky and his relationship with Ginger. And we have to understand the core problem they had with each other at first. And it might seem like Rocky learned the importance of honesty, and once he could be honest, he could finally have a relationship with Ginger and they could get along. You know, like he lied about where he was from and what he was doing, what he could do, but he learned to accept the truth. And, you know, you can imagine that, you know, him lying, his lack of honesty was the major obstacle in the relationship between Rocky and Ginger, because she was rightfully suspicious of Rocky, that Rocky was lying to her and lying to the other chickens. And for Rocky, you know, from his perspective, he was carrying that shame of lying, and he couldn't face telling the truth. And so he did run away before becoming the kind of person capable of facing the truth. But I think this is missing something. Ginger was skeptical of Rocky until he risked his life to save her. After he comes back, the fact that he had ever been dishonest simply doesn't seem like the central issue. I think that for Ginger, the central issue was his lack of solidarity. Rocky didn't have any sense of solidarity with his fellow chickens, and so he didn't have any trouble lying to him. It's not that the dishonesty was the problem. The dishonesty was symptomatic of the problem. He knew that he could run away when the time came, and he would be okay, and he didn't really care that much about the other chickens. Ginger, on the other hand, valued solidarity very highly. She could have escaped on her own, but chose multiple times throughout the movie to go back until she could get all of the chickens out. So we can see Rocky's dishonesty is not the major problem. It's symptomatic of his lack of solidarity. He doesn't care about the other chickens, and so he can just take advantage of them. And once we see that, you know, the solidarity between the chickens is the central question here. I have to wonder what kind of solidarity we were talking about, you know. Who are the chickens? That is, who do they represent? The first thing that stood out to me was that all the chickens are female. They lay eggs, and they are discarded when they can't produce eggs anymore. You know, once they are no longer fertile. And I wondered if the chickens were, you know, being trafficked. Or maybe it was representative of how our culture more broadly disregards women who are no longer young or no longer fertile. And I do think that this movie does have some feminist messages, some feminist themes, but I don't think that this was the best way for me to view the movie, for me to understand what it meant to be a chicken within the framework of the movie. And so as a YouTube video essay, the next obvious step was to view the chickens as representing the proletariat, you know, As a YouTube video essayist, I am legally obligated to mention Marx here. And it's a pretty simple, straightforward reading. The chickens produce eggs for a capitalist who takes all the profit from their labor, and when they can no longer produce profit for the capitalist, they are discarded. But this still doesn't really explain the roosters. There are two roosters who have a different role based off of their gender. They don't really produce profit for... I guess Rocky did produce profit for the circus owner, but it feels like a very different gendered relationship that you might not have in a strictly Marxist reading. But trying to read the movie this way did lead to, some funny moments for me, wondering if the guard dogs who, patrol the farm or, class traders. Mr. Tweety, the bumbling husband, seems to be more of where the chickens are doing. And at one point, he says they're organizing like they're about to form a union. And Mrs. Tweety says, oh no, they aren't organizing. And it's like she doesn't expect them. She doesn't respect them enough to think that they might organize, and it might be, commentary on how the capitalist class doesn't view the workers as full people, but views them as chickens, as animals that are too stupid to fight for their own values and their own worth, and, don't deserve to have that, don't deserve to have union and representation. But of course, trying to connect the movie to feminism or Marxism or even, the resistance to fascism is missing the most obvious way of interpreting the story, that the chickens are indeed representing chickens. And I think that idea is really the scariest way to view this movie. The vast majority of people are okay killing chickens and eating them. And as terrible as the chickens' prison camp may seem in this movie, the vast majority of modern industrial chicken farms that actually exist in the real world are far worse. These chickens here never see the light of day because they live in the UK. But these chickens never see the light of day because they were never allowed outside. And there's another video I saw where someone was arguing that Miss Tweety was actually good, and I was going to make a response video similar to my response video to the people saying that Lord Farquaad and Shrek was good. But the thing is that for the vast majority of the movie, Miss Tweety isn't bad to the chickens by the standards of the largely meat-eating audience of the movie. And that's why the movie is so scary. Miss Tweety isn't the real villain. We are. We are the ones that create demand for chickens to be slaughtered and kept within horrible conditions. But there is, of course, one major difference between the chickens in Chicken Run and actual chickens. The chickens in Chicken Run are smart. Or at least as smart as the people. Both groups have some dumb representation within the movie. They can form plans, and they can use language. And so if we're going with this, if we're going with the vegan interpretation of Chicken Run, I think most vegans would say that intelligence isn't the central concern of determining who has moral weight. It's more the ability to suffer. They would probably point to babies, which can't yet form plans or use language. And they would ask if it's okay to hurt a chicken for our pleasure, because the chicken is stupid, it can't use language, it can't form plans, it's not intelligent. But it's okay to hurt a baby that isn't smart, can't form plans, can't use language. Really, how could intelligence be the distinguishing feature between the baby and the chicken? When we're saying that it's okay to hurt one and not the other. If they're both capable of suffering, shouldn't we give equal consideration to both? They might also bring up dogs. Many people would be outraged to find dogs living in the same conditions as factory-farmed chickens. And so I think, the vegan might say intelligence might be a necessary plot concession to tell a story and to make it easier for us to empathize with the chickens. But the question that Chicken Run forces us to ask is if intelligence really is the justification, or should I say the lack of intelligence, if that is the justification for causing harm to animals, when there are alternatives, we don't have to be doing this. We could just simply do something else as the vegan does. And, I've seen, a bunch of people make some interesting arguments of Chicken Run is representing Marxism and all of that stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting. But perhaps, a bit uncreatively. I think they might just be gilding the lily a little bit here. I think maybe the takeaway of Chicken Run, if you're going to have any takeaway at all, besides, solidarity is a good thing, is that we shouldn't be hurting chickens. Now, I didn't learn any new words watching this movie, but if you enjoyed this video, you might want to watch that Shrek video I mentioned earlier. It's over here, where I say that Lord Farquaad actually was a bad guy, oddly enough. But don't forget to drop me a like before you go, and remember, good night, good day, good potato.